sur la langue que vous souhaitez entendre. Si vous ne savez pas, ne vous inquiétez pas parce que quand on aura démarré, on va vous montrer comment faire. Hello.
Dans quelques instants. Si vous ne l'avez pas encore fait, nous vous invitons à ajouter vos pronoms à votre nom dans Zoom. Et également, si vous préférez suivre et faire les activités en français, on aura des activités aujourd'hui, d'ajouter FR à votre nom, comme ça on puisse vous mettre dans les bons groupes. Et on a aussi l'interprétation simultanée disponible. Donc, si vous en avez besoin, cliquez sur interprétation et choisissez la langue de votre choix. Si vous ne savez pas comment le faire, nous vous le montrerons dans quelques instants, une fois que nous aurons commencé. OK. Donc,
Voilà,
I'm gonna get started just because we
je
have
vais
a lot to
démarrer
do very
parce
shortly.
qu'on a énormément de choses à faire.
So I'm gonna hit
Avant de
recording.
commencer, je
The
vais
session is being recorded.
mettre
If you are
l'enregistrement.
not able to attend the session,
C'est pour
the
ceux qui ne
parts that
peuvent
are
pas
recorded will be
assister.
recording
Il y aura des
afterwards in the main session.
parties dans le
So some
sales
of the
planner qui vont
presentations
enregistrer. Certaines
for the most
activités
part
aussi vont
and
être
discussion will be recorded.
enregistrées.
So will be
Et,
recorded. So just to give everyone
mais
a
juste
sense,
pour
it's
que
going to
vous
be
sachiez que dans le breakout rooms,
confidentially.
ça ne va pas être enregistré.
And please let us know if you have any
Si vous
questions
pouvez nous
after the
dire si
session.
vous avez des préoccupations de fait qu'on va enregistrer la séance, vous pouvez envoyer un message à Megan aussi un message sur ARC ou moi-même et on peut vous expliquer pourquoi on va enregistrer. This-
L'enregistrement ne sera que pour cette partie de la session, donc la partie où on est tous dans la même salle, virtuelle bien sûr, et sera utilisé pour en fait partager avec les personnes qui n'ont pas pu venir à la session. Donc s'il y a quoi que ce soit, si vous avez des questions par rapport à l'enregistrement, n'hésitez pas à nous contacter. Donc l'équipe de l'ARC, donc soit Megan, Léla ou moi-même. OK, let's get started.
On va démarrer. Je vais partager mon écran. Comme ça, vous pouvez avoir l'accès visuel pour cette séance. Est-ce que vous pouvez voir mon écran? Oui, parfait.
Donc, bienvenue à notre atelier, comment rédiger une déclaration pour le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires. Welcome to our workshop on how to craft an impactful Black
Donc, on va parler comment rédiger une déclaration pour le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires. Avant de commencer, j'ai voulu être sûr qu'on bien on se comprend bien.
Je veux m'assurer que nous nous
Puis,
comprenons tous et que je n'ai pas à me répéter. Donc, on va commencer avec l'interprétation. Cette session aura des interventions en anglais et en français. Donc, en fonction de votre préférence linguistique, nous vous invitons à cliquer sur le bouton d'interprétation en bas de la fenêtre Zoom et cliquer sur la langue de votre choix. Une fois que vous avez cliqué sur la langue que vous souhaitez entendre, on vous propose de couper le son original pour une meilleure expérience d'écoute en sélectionnant Mute Original Sound dans la fenêtre contextuelle d'interprétation. Si vous n'avez pas l'icône, veuillez vérifier que votre Zoom est à jour. Malheureusement, si vous êtes dans un navigateur, au lieu de l'application, vous n'aurez pas accès à l'interprétation. So the session will be both in English and in
cette
French.
séance va être anglais et en français. Vous avez la possibilité de trouver en bas de la fenêtre de Zoom, vous pouvez choisir votre langue de préférence. Une fois que vous avez choisi la langue que vous voulez entendre, vous pouvez, s'il vous plaît, désactiver l'audio original et vous avez choisi Mute Original Audio. Et si vous ne voyez pas l'icône, vous pouvez, euh, il faut vous assurer que vous avez la mise à jour de Zoom. Et si vous êtes en train d'utiliser Zoom sur le navigateur et pas l'application, vous n'aurez pas l'accès à l'interprétation. Nous avons notre équipe bilingue, donc vous avez des questions. Si vous avez besoin de soutien, n'hésitez pas d'envoyer un petit chat à Megan. Elle a mis Megan Tech Support dans son nom. Et voilà, vous pouvez contacter Megan Tech Support. Alors, je vais attendre une minute pour m'assurer que tout le monde a l'accès à l'interprétation. L'interprétation devait marcher pour tout. Je vais arrêter de me répéter chaque fois. Je vais juste remercier, c'est très gentil. Je suis en train d'être remerciée. Je m'appelle Wendy, je suis l'interprète. Dans un autre point de rappel, peut-être peut-être vous avez remarqué, on a désactivé votre micro. Euh, il faut rester sur le micro des activités, sauf si vous allez poser une question. Et si vous voulez vous soulevez une question, vous pouvez lever le bouton de main, donc lever la main, ce bouton. Et vous pouvez aussi, si vous voulez, préférer, vous pouvez utiliser le chat aussi. Vous pouvez envoyer vos commentaires, vos questions dans le chat. Vous allez avoir assez de temps pour avoir une conversation. Non, ça c'est super. Je voudrais aussi vous faire savoir que on a les diapositives en anglais et en français. Vous voyez les deux couleurs anglais en anglais et vert en français. Les deux langues sont là pour le soutien visuel. Si quelque chose qui manque, n'hésitez pas à nous faire savoir. On va partager aussi les documents dans le chat. Donc, vous pouvez voir ce qui se passe pour avoir un soutien supplémentaire si besoin. Voilà, donc c'est bien. Comment on commence la séance? On a toujours la reconnaissance des terres et ma reconnaissance de la terre. C'est quelque chose que j'aime bien faire dans ma langue maternelle, Kinawata. Et dans l'écran, vous avez la version en anglais, un résumé, ce que je vais dire. Et pourquoi je le fais dans ma langue maternelle? Pour parler dans ma langue, aussi pour respecter le le peuple autochtone de l'île de Tortue. Maintenant, je le parle dans ma langue maternelle, que vous pouvez lire ce que j'ai dit en anglais et en français sur l'écran. Megan a déjà aussi partagé dans le chat ce message pour ceux. Nous, on aimerait bien de savoir d'où vous êtes. On partage toujours l'outil pour la carte, pour le guide de reconnaissance des territoires. Et vous pouvez partager le territoire d'où vous venez. Alors, on a les accords communautaires, que- communautaires et donc c'est une opportunité pour nous pour avoir les lignes directrices, comment on va s'engager ensemble dans cet espace. Ils sont ouverts pour parler ensemble de cela. Si vous pensez qu'il y a quelque chose qui manque ou si vous pensez qu'il faut modifier un des accords, vous pouvez le faire savoir maintenant ou même dans la séance. Le premier accord, c'est nous espérons que vous ferez ce dont vous avez besoin pour assurer votre pleine participation et que vous communiquerez vos besoins à mesure qu'ils évoluent. Deuxièmement, nous nous engageons à construire un espace plus sûr privilégiant le respect, la transparence, la confidentialité, la participation équitable, l'honnêteté et la propriété de nos paroles et de nos actions. Nous nous engageons à assurer la sécurité physique, émotionnelle, sexuelle et spirituelle de tous, notamment en dénonçant les comportements néfastes. Nous nous engageons à participer à cet atelier avec un esprit d'ouverture à l'apprentissage et en reconnaissant que la grande diversité des participants comprend une expérience et des connaissances qui dépassent les miennes et les nôtres et grâce auxquelles on peut grandir. Je voudrais ajouter ici, c'est vraiment l'espace d'apprentissage et la perfection n'est pas quelque chose c'est pas l'objectif, je veux dire. En fait, ici, c'est vraiment un espace pour essayer les choses, pour être honnête et parfois on va faire les choses un peu en dehors de notre zone de confort. Je vais vous donner une minute pour voir vos réactions, vos pensées concernant les accords communautaires. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose qu'on devait ajouter, modifier dans ces accords communautaires affichés sur l'écran? Bon, on peut revenir à ces accords communautaires, mais ce sont les lignes directrices. Si vous avez participé à nos séances, on commence avec les hypothèses, les principes communautaires. Donc, c'est très important d'avoir des déclarations que nous, on va les traiter, ces déclarations en tant que faits. Ils sont tous sur l'écran en anglais et en français, mais je vais les lire. Tous les systèmes d'oppression existent et sont interconnectés. La lutte contre les systèmes d'oppression, la construction d'alternatives et les changements culturels sont tous ces éléments nécessaires. Le démantèlement des systèmes d'oppression profite à toutes. La lutte contre l'injustice sociale peut être douloureuse et ou joyeuse. La libération est possible. Et je vais faire la prochaine partie en français. Euh, Donc ici, voilà ce qu'on va faire. Vous voyez l'heure de jour avec le temps qu'on a, qui nous reste. Tout le monde sait que l'objectif de cet atelier, on aura 5 parties que vous voyez ici. On va commencer avec le centre l'ARC et de cet atelier, on va vous parler de qui on est en tant qu'équipe et pourquoi on voulait faire cet atelier. On va parler dans ce domaine-là. On va aussi parler de comprendre le contexte de l'activité. On aura la première activité et après, on va voir en tant que ce que nous avons en tant que groupe considéré comme élément d'une déclaration significative et percutante. Après, on aura l'activité 2. Après, il y aura une pause. Ensuite, après la pause, on va faire les rédactions des déclarations et il y aura l'activité 3 ensuite et les commentaires des pairs et la clôture. Bon, vous voyez que c'est un ordre de jour très ambitieux. J'espère qu'on peut faire autant que possible avec le temps alloué. On va partager aussi dans le chat maintenant. Donc, on a une fiche de travail, worksheet. On aura les conseils, concernant votre participation dans les activités. Et ce worksheet ou fiche de travail, ce serait premièrement en anglais, puis ensuite en français pour chaque partie. Vous pouvez télécharger euh, ce- justement cette fiche pour prendre des éléments, de prendre des notes. Est-ce que ça va? Est-ce que quelqu'un a des questions avant que je continue? C'est bon pour tout le monde? Parfait. On va participer beaucoup dans cette séance et donc on va voir, ça va être après qu'on va bien participer ensemble. Vous allez voir. Je vais me présenter. Moi, je vais présenter moi-même. Moi, c'est Barbara. Je vais faciliter cette séance. Et moi également, je suis un des collègues pour le ARC Hub. Je suis coordinatrice pour l'équipe. Ici, j'ai Megan, c'est l'assistante de programme qui va faire tout le soutien technique et aussi Leila, c'est donc donc expert en juridique. Et après, elle va être les deux vont être participants dans le droit, mais aussi ici en tant qu'expert. Donc, voilà notre équipe de ARC Hub. Et on assiste les organisations de vraiment, on soutient le gouvernement international canadien et les organisations humanitaires pour améliorer leur capacité d'intégrer l'antiracisme et le féminisme. Et on fait ça avec grâce aux ressources qu'on on fournit et les connaissances. Et nous, on existe depuis 2021 et j'espère que vous avez déjà assisté à une de nos séances ici. C'est vraiment pour le lancement de notre mois de l'histoire des, des familles noires. C'est le mois de l'histoire des Noirs. Et vous allez voir aussi avoir des informations concernant ce qu'on va faire dans cette semaine à venir pour ce mois. Pourquoi cet atelier? Cette idée, c'est justement, on a remarqué, surtout dans le secteur, qu'il y a il y a un manque de reconnaissance. On voulait créer un espace où on pouvait équiper les personnes qui développent les déclarations et qui font ce travail. On voulait les équiper avec les outils pour avoir les déclarations concernant l'histoire des Noirs avec beaucoup d'impact maintenant et à l'avenir. Donc, nous, l'idée, c'est d'aider, de créer les stratégies, les déclarations pour avec plein d'impact pour l'histoire des Noirs. Bon, à la fin de cette séance, tout le monde aura un projet de déclaration pour l'histoire des Noirs. Aussi, il n'y a pas de... Vous pouvez, si vous préférez, ne pas créer une déclaration, mais vous pouvez, si vous préférez, à la place, créer des activités. On va parler de le processus pour poser les questions. Quelles sont les questions qu'on devait poser? Est-ce qu'on préfère élaborer des déclarations ou on va créer des activités tous liées avec l'histoire de Noirs pour ce mois de l'histoire des Noirs. Est-ce que vous avez des questions jusqu'au ce point-là? Parfait. Est-ce que tout ce qu'on a dit maintenant, c'est clair pour tout le monde? C'est pour ça on fait cet atelier. Aussi, ça fait partie de tout notre objectif beaucoup plus global concernant notre travail, l'antiracisme. Alors, pour comprendre le contexte, je pense que la plupart des personnes, mais j'aime bien commencer avec ici, le mois de l'histoire des personnes, c'était créé aux États-Unis en 1926. Il y avait la semaine de l'histoire des Noirs et après c'était un mois dans les années suivantes. ce mois est essentiellement a évolué aujourd'hui, surtout au Canada et aux États-Unis, pour être devenu une célébration de les contributions des Africains, euh, des personnes noires africaines et caribéennes présentes et futures. Et c'est une célébration qui est toujours en février. Aux États-Unis, au Royaume-Uni, c'est en octobre. C'est notre moment au Royaume-Uni, mais c'est quelque chose qui est reconnu au Canada et il y a des organisations qui ont des connexions avec l'histoire noire de contribuer. Ils sont demandés de contribuer. Pourquoi c'est important? Notre secteur devait interagir et devait connecter avec le mois de l'histoire des Noirs. L'histoire des Noirs. Et c'est très, très important parce qu'il y a la culture suprématie qu'il faut aborder aussi, l'anti-noir qui existe dans les structures, les institutions. C'est un moment pour nous de aussi aborder des situations des pouvoirs. Ça peut être à un niveau d'une organisation ou l'individu. Nous, notre secteur aime bien être connecté à or- d'autres organisation plus importante. Et nous, c'est la dernière année pour la décennie on est sur la fin de la décennie pour les, les personnes noires. Il y a des connexions entre cette décennie pour les onusiennes pour les personnes noires. Et donc, nous, on a des connexions avec cette décennie et notre travail. Ah,
de changement antiraciste et de contribuer au démantèlement de l'anti-blackness mondial. Il n'y a pas une bonne traduction de anti-blackness en français que j'ai apprécié, donc malheureusement, je vais utiliser cet anglicisme au cours de la présentation aujourd'hui. Donc, nos engagements pour le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires reflètent aussi nos engagements antiracistes et décoloniaux. Euh, Et pour ceux qui ne savent pas, on a au Canada, ces engagements sont faits à travers le cadre de l'antiracisme en coopération, donc de notre organisation. Mais ce sont aussi des importants signaux pour nos équipes et nos partenaires sur nos engagements, sur ce travail à l'interne et dans nos relations avec les autres organisations. Et faire des déclarations comme pour le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires peut être aussi un moment de responsabilisation et d'introspection sur notre travail continu pour démanteler l'anti-blackness dans nos systèmes, processus et interactions. Donc, faire une déclaration, c'est pas juste une déclaration, il y a beaucoup, ça sert à aussi faire ces signaux à nos équipes et nos partenaires, mais aussi un moment de responsabilisation. Et tout ceci nous mène à notre première activité. Donc, je ne sais pas si vous avez reçu le, la feuille d'activité. So, you should have received the activities worksheet and you'll be able to see this first activity there.
En fait, vous allez pouvoir voir la première activité si vous avez téléchargé dans le chat la fiche d'activité, le worksheet. Est-ce que tout le monde a pu
Yes.
télécharger
Thumbs up.
cette fiche? Je vois que
Any
il y
issues,
a
please let us
des
know
personnes qui
in
l'ont
the chat
pu
or
télécharger. Si vous avez des
and I'll
soucis,
get myself to
n'hésitez
the
pas à nous faire savoir. Comme ça, si vous n'avez pas
there.
pu
Perfect.
l'obtenir,
How's that?
on peut
We'll make it
vous
easy
aider.
access.
Si vous
If there's
n'avez
a
pas
Word
l'accès.
document, I'm happy
En fait,
to share a
je
Google
peux partager
Doc
aussi
if you make a
euh,
copy of it.
un lien de doc. Vous pouvez faire une copie.
What would work best for you for
Qu'est-ce qui
Google
vous
Docs?
aidera? Qu'est-ce sera plus facile pour vous? Je
A
peux faire
copy. A copy?
une copie?
Okay.
Non,
Megan, can
une
you send
copie.
that to Larissa, please?
Megan, vous pouvez l'envoyer, s'il
Yes,
vous
of
plaît.
course. I just put it back in
Oui,
the
en
chat
fait,
and I will
bien entendu,
also
c'est encore de nouveau
put
dans
it
le
as a
chat.
PDF.
Je vais les mettre aussi en tant que PDF. Des fois, ce serait intéressant pour certaines personnes de l'avoir en tant que PDF. On va faire la première activité. C'est une activité où vous prenez le temps pour réfléchir. Vous voulez le remplir pour votre organisation et vous pouvez aussi matcher votre organisation. Ce qu'on veut faire, on veut penser à l'organisation, les valeurs, les principes et comment ils sont connectés au mois de l'histoire des Noirs. Donc, on veut euh, que vous puissiez refléter sur les valeurs de votre organisation dans ce contexte. Et donc, on veut avoir quatre euh, valeurs clés. Donc, ça peut être les documentations officielles ou ça peut être de notre connaissance de votre activité. Donc, si vous pouvez nommer quatre valeurs clés qui reflètent votre organisation, quelque chose de pratique, vous pouvez écrire qu'est-ce qui vraiment match le mieux. Et ensuite, la deuxième question, comment ces valeurs s'alignent, elles, sur le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires? Et la troisième question, est-ce que mon organisation reconnaît-elle activement et célèbre-t-elle le, le mois pour l'histoire des personnes noires? Ça peut être externe euh, ou interne. Nous, on veut vraiment établir ce que nos organisations ont fait et quels sont leurs engagements en général, pas seulement pour euh, de le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires ou aussi vraiment lié avec le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires. Prenez quelques minutes pour justement remplir cette fiche pour cette activité numéro un. Je pense que maintenant, on peut prendre 10 minutes pour faire cela. Je vais Vous allez aller dans les groupes, tout le monde va revenir dans une dizaine de minutes. Quand vous êtes en train de faire l'exercice et si vous voulez vous poser des questions, vous pouvez euh, activer votre micro. Mais sinon, si vous pouvez prendre ce temps pour faire cette activité, si vous faites partie si vous êtes dans un groupe avec quelqu'un de votre équipe, c'est une bonne opportunité pour comparer avec quelqu'un de votre équipe. Maintenant, je vais arrêter de parler. Et donc, on va se revoir dans 10 minutes. Vous avez 10 minutes pour cette activité numéro un.
We're just gonna give 2 more minutes, and then we'll come back, and talk a little bit about this exercise and how we felt about the activity. Okay, I'm gonna bring us all back.
Voilà, je
Um,
vais faire rentrer de nouveau tout le monde. Tout le monde va rejoindre le groupe. On va tous revenir dans la séance plénière. J'espère que tout le monde a pu compléter l'exercice parce qu'on aura besoin de cette activité pour les prochaines étapes. Mais est-ce que quelqu'un a besoin d'encore un peu plus de temps? Fais-moi savoir. C'est possible de vous donner encore 2 minutes ou est-ce que ça va pour tout le monde? Ou est-ce que vous êtes prêt à revenir? Ah, je vois que vous avez fait le signe avec votre doigt que tout va bien. Alors, comment c'était? Est-ce que vous avez trouvé ça, c'était euh, difficile de ajouter ces valeurs? Est-ce qu'il y a, ou est-ce que c'était facile de faire ces connexions et de voir comment ces valeurs s'alignent elles-mêmes avec le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires ou est-ce que c'était difficile?
yes, please, Ben, go
Oui,
ahead.
Ben, vous avez la parole. Moi, c'est Ben. Je suis dans le développement international au Canada. Et pour moi, je trouvais que c'était plus facile à faire que je pensais. Nous, on travaille dans une organisation, notre cible, c'est de donner l'accès équitable, l'information équitable pour les groupes des nouveaux arrivés au Canada. Et une partie, c'est de reconnaître la réalité de les personnes qui viennent d'arriver au Canada, c'est-à-dire le racisme, la discrimination et la phobie, et aussi les structures d'oppression pour ces nouveaux arrivés au Canada. Et donc, quand je pensais à ces valeurs pour ce mois de l'histoire euh, des personnes noires, on peut penser à toutes les luttes de ces personnes noires dans l'île de Tortue. Et, et je pense, oui, qu'il y avait ces valeurs qui s'alignaient et c'était vraiment très utile de faire cet exercice. Merci d'avoir partagé ça, Ben. Est-ce que tout le monde a vu que les connexions étaient facile ou c'était difficile de trouver? Euh, Est-ce que ces valeurs s'alignaient avec le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires, donc les valeurs de votre organisation ou non? On a, Barbara, je voulais vous dire, il y a des commentaires qui sont dans le chat aussi. Est-ce que vous voulez les lire? Oui. Eleanor dit c'était facile de trouver les valeurs, mais pas toujours facile de les connecter au mois de l'histoire des personnes noires. Et Gabriel a dit, oui, pour moi, l'idée, c'était de connecter le plan stratégique de notre organisation à notre travail politique, ce que nous faisons une, d'une manière quotidienne. Et il y avait certaines connexions qui étaient plus faciles que d'autres. Oui, notre secteur a vraiment une gamme très importante et il travaille au Canada et aussi au-delà du Canada. Et parfois, de faire les connexions, ça exige plus d'efforts, en fait. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui vraiment était coincé et avait du mal à faire ces connexions? Est-ce que quelqu'un était dans ce cas-là? Non? Non? Parfait. Ça veut dire que vous allez pouvoir faire les autres activités. Allison et Eleanor, notre connexion était assez très large. La justice, système équitable, la diversité et l'inclusion. Oui, en fait, le plus spécifique, c'est mieux, mais si on ne peut pas faire que les connexions très larges, ce n'est pas un problème. On peut essayer de peaufiner ces connexions, soit avec une perspective interne, de regarder intérieurement, de voir comment nous, à, à notre organisation, on traite nos personnels, on peut regarder notre infrastructure, ou bien on peut vraiment cibler les endroits où on travaille. Justin, merci Barbara. Je pense que c'était vraiment un point très utile. La dernière question, notre organisation a reconnu activement et on célèbre le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires. C'était par les réflexions. Le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires, c'est le mois de février. Il faut vraiment regarder toute la communication et il faut reconnaître ça commence pas juste le 1er février et finir le fin février. Non, c'est pour toute l'année et surtout dans notre organisation. Et les voix des personnes noires devaient être entendues toute l'année, pas seulement le mois de février. C'est vraiment quelque chose que, oui, c'est le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires, mais c'est toute l'année aussi. Non, ça c'est juste un moment où on va regarder spécifiquement euh, le mois de février. On va cibler ça pour ce mois, mais également quand je parle de la redevabilité, la responsabilité, c'est de faire toute l'année aussi. Merci Justin pour ce point, pour ce commentaire. Bien. Maintenant, on a cette base et on a regardé ces connexions. Maintenant, on va voir les éléments d'une déclaration significative et percutante. Ce sont les éléments que moi, je recommande. C'est un point de départ et j'espère aussi que je peux avoir d'autres éléments clés à ajouter et, et quels sont les éléments clés qu'on va utiliser pour évaluer nos propres déclarations. Ça, c'est un point de départ seulement. J'espère que je peux avoir vos impressions aussi. Alors, les éléments que j'ai identifiés sont les suivants. Donc, une déclaration pertinente a un objectif. Il faut bien comprendre pourquoi on écrit des déclarations. Chaque organisation a le propre processus pour rédiger des déclarations et il y a toujours un objectif, un but et intention pour chaque déclaration. Et ce but peut être très large aussi. Ça peut être quand on veut vraiment communiquer qu'on fait ça et ça. Euh,
showing
Ça
what
peut
kind
être
of
aussi
values
l'objectif de
we
montrer
might
ce qu'on fait,
bring to
le
the
travail qu'on fait dans notre
organization.
organisation et à l'extérieur de notre
Different
organisation.
styles of
On a
statements,
des manières différentes, des styles différents de déclaration, mais le but et l'intention derrière chaque
so
déclaration est très important. Et il faut penser d'une manière et le connecter et d'une manière spécifiquement
another
connectée
element
à l'histoire des
also
personnes,
is authentic.
le mois des personnes, l'histoire des personnes noires.
So is
Alors, il faut que ce soit
this
authentique et
declaration
représentatif.
a reflection
Alors,
of your
en
organization?
fait, est-ce que cette déclaration reflète mon
We
organisation?
are doing,
Est-ce que ça représente le
and
travail qu'on
does your
fait dans mon
organization
organisation? Est-ce que mon organisation est-elle prête à rédiger une déclaration sur le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires? Il n'y a pas vraiment une réponse
it's really
correcte ou pas correcte,
possible because it
mais
depends
aussi
on
pour le
who
mois de l'histoire des
your
personnes noires,
audience would be,
votre
how to
public
choose them directly.
vraiment, il peut
And
voir si c'est
for the
les
declaration,
déclarations
your team
authentiques et votre
specifically,
équipe.
a statement about
Si vous allez faire une déclaration concernant le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires,
members of your team,
les
they
membres
tend to be your first critics.
afro-américains vont être les premiers
They may
critiques
not
de
actually
votre
represent you
déclaration. Si la déclaration n'est pas
of what's meant
quelque
for
chose
you.
authentique et représentatif de la vraie expérience de votre organisation, c'est pas
One of your
une déclaration avec de l'impact.
And the third element I would
Et
say is
troisième élément,
with
c'est
professional
aligner
values as well.
sur les valeurs et les
Is
engagements de
it
l'organisation
is a
pour
signal
rester
both
responsable.
internally, like we just
Non,
talked
c'est
about,
vraiment
but
un
externally with
signe
your partners
et,
as
et
well.
voilà, c'est aussi avec les
How
partenaires. Donc, vous allez
values and
aligner ça
priorities
avec vos valeurs et vous
you want to
dites
see
vos valeurs, les
in
priorités de votre
every
organisation. Il faut
accountable
toujours
team.
aligner sur les valeurs et les engagements de l'organisation.
How we do that.
Et, et c'est très important la manière qu'on on
And
s'exprime
another key element
ces
is
valeurs
no
et
statement is
les
perfect.
engagements. Bon,
And
une
that
déclaration n'est
is
pas
great. That's what
parfaite,
we want to talk about.
mais
And so can you play
c'est
around with the
on
concept of
voulait
using no
justement
statements
avoir un
and
atelier
statements and figuring
ici
out
pour
which ones
vraiment
work?
faire des essais avec
So
les
for example,
déclarations,
are
parce
there
qu'il n'y a
any
pas de
elements
déclaration parfaite. Est-ce qu'il y a des éléments clés que vous
um,
pensez qu'il faut ajouter à notre liste?
do these reflect what you would
Est-ce
think
que
about when
ces éléments clés
drafting a statement?
sont vraiment ces éléments que vous pensez quand vous êtes prêt en train de faire une déclaration? Ben?
I think another
Oui,
important
je pense
consideration
une
is
autre
who you're
considération
writing
importante,
this
c'est
to
à
for.
qui
Like,
vous allez écrire la déclaration.
if
Quel est votre
accessibility
public?
is new to
Est-ce que
you,
vous avez des besoins
and not a
d'accessibilité?
specific
Ou est-ce que c'est un public très,
that
très
might be
large?
really challenging for me
Ça, c'est
to
vraiment,
figure out
pour moi,
how to,
c'est très important
declare these
et
things
c'est un
and
challenge.
distill it into a
C'est
meaningful
une
document
déclaration
for
encadrée,
someone with
mais il y
limited
a un but et une intention et pour
That's a
qui?
really good
C'est
point. I think
important de savoir
audiences as
quel
well. I think there's
public.
more than one audience,
Il y a,
especially when we're thinking about Black History Month. So
souvent,
that's
il
a
y a
really
plus
good point
d'un public, il n'y a pas un seul public
to consider.
qu'il faut cibler.
Another one.
Et ça, donc, Erin, vous avez
Thanks.
la parole.
The one
Merci.
that I would consider is
Moi, ce que je
since we have aligning
considérais,
with
c'est
organizational
qu'on
values and
s'aligne avec les
commitments,
valeurs des
then I
organisations,
wonder
les
if we
engagements. Et
consider
moi, je me
how
demande si
it
on
aligns
considère
with our
aussi comment ça
organizational
s'aligne
work.
avec le travail de
So
notre
does it
organisation.
need to
En
align
fait,
with
est-ce
our
qu'il faut s'aligner
organizational
avec
value,
l'orientation du travail
or
qu'on fait ou,
are we only looking at how
ou
it
est-ce qu'on
aligns with
regarde
our
seulement comment ça s'aligne
values? Yeah.
avec nos valeurs? C'est ça ma
Okay.
question.
And
Oui?
I have maybe
Est-ce
a
que
little bit
je
more
peux
concrete example in
demander
terms
un
of
exemple plus concret
organizational values versus
concernant les
organizational
valeurs
Sure. So
de l'organisation par rapport aux valeurs? La valeur, ça peut être
justice,
la
equality, like was
justice,
mentioned earlier on the chat,
un
but
système
the work that
équitable,
we do,
l'égalité.
let's say we
Et le
do
travail, c'est que nous,
professional development
on travaille
to
euh,
help women
développement
be
international en Bangladesh pour
in
aider les
industry
femmes
get a
dans
fair wage.
l'industrie
So that's like a very specific
de
kind of work. So would we need to
vêtements,
try and
d'avoir un
align
salaire
our work
équitable.
that
Est-ce
way,
qu'il faut
or
s'aligner
has it just
aussi
got
le
to be
travail ou juste
Okay,
rester
that's a
avec nos
really good
valeurs?
question.
Ah, c'est une très bonne question.
I'll maybe start with the first one.
Je vais commencer avec la
Ben
première
mentioned
partie, la première question, pardon.
audience,
De
audiences,
Ben, il a parlé des
really
publics. Oui, c'est vrai que
and as
c'est un
audiences,
élément très clé.
that
et je peux l'ajouter à notre liste. Je voulais parler le public plus tard, mais je pense que maintenant c'est un bon moment de parler de public ciblé. Et concernant les publics, il y a aussi euh, l'organisation interne enfin le public interne. Et aussi, ensuite, il y a les partenaires externes. Ils sont aussi le public ciblé. C'est très important de aussi vraiment bien cibler le public interne ou externe. Alors, concernant l'alignement, et comment ça s'aligne avec, en fait, c'est-à-dire que comment on peut, l'importance de regarder les valeurs par rapport à notre travail, de notre organisation. Vous pouvez prendre l'exemple que vous avez donné. Nous avons les valeurs, la justice, l'égalité, etc. Et ce n'est pas nécessairement connecté avec le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires. Il y a deux choses qu'il faut considérer. Et j'aimerais bien aussi entendre les points de vue d'autres, l'articulation de ces valeurs. Comme j'ai dit, il y a le public interne. Il faut s'assurer que ça peut être les membres qui, actuels ou les membres à l'avenir. Et ça peut être le public, c'est pas connecté directement, mais en fait, c'est vraiment la manière qu'on on approche le travail. Et également, il faut penser, donc, le mois de l'histoire des personnes noires est vraiment est lié avec d'autres problèmes beaucoup plus mondiaux. Peut-être il y a des manières différentes d'aborder ce problème, articuler les problèmes qui n'est pas juste pour le mois de février. Et comme vous êtes en train de rédiger la déclaration, vous pouvez penser si quel est votre public? Est-ce que c'est pour les communautés que vous servez directement? Et après, ça serait, est-ce que ce serait plutôt le public, ce sera les partenaires, par exemple le gouvernement du Canada, et vous avez donc un alignement avec des valeurs dans ce cas-là, ou est-ce que c'est pour votre personnel, pour vous assurer que ceux qui sont déjà, le personnel déjà ou à l'avenir, et c'est quelque chose qui, ils peuvent vraiment être alignés avec ces valeurs. Donc, je sais que parfois c'est un peu difficile, donc je suis là pour je suis là pour votre point de vue. Non, 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 c'était utile, très, très utile pour un point de départ. Merci. On va l'ajouter à la liste de ces points. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres commentaires, d'autres questions avant qu'on continue? Non? Bon, alors, voilà l'activité numéro 2. On va le faire en groupe. On a, en fait, on aura un peu moins de personnes qu'on avait pensé, donc vous allez avoir les petits groupes. Est-ce qu'il y a des personnes qui veulent travailler en français? Si vous voulez travailler en français, on peut avoir un groupe francophone si vous voulez. Est-ce que tout le monde est ouvert de travailler en anglais? Ou est-ce qu'il y a des personnes qui veulent être dans un espace bilingue? Comme vous voulez. Est-ce que vous avez ces préférences ou non? Non? Donc, nous, on va répartir ces- les participants dans trois groupes et les trois groupes vont regarder les déclarations différentes et vont regarder les questions suivantes. Alors, qu'est-ce que vous aimez pour les déclaration que vous avez devant vous, quelle serait une des choses qu'on peut changer pour que la déclaration soit avec plus d'impact et comment la déclaration match les éléments clés qu'on vient de discuter. Donc, vous voyez le but et l'intention, l'authenticité et représentation, alignement des valeurs et des engagements de l'organisation. On va ajouter le public aussi, on va l'incorporer cet élément qui a été partagé avec le groupe. je vais faire un peu de coordination. Alors, on va allouer 3 groupes. Vous me dites quand. Vous allez avoir 15 minutes à chaque groupe pour lire la déclaration et on va vous dire quand il faut revenir.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Denise. Hello, Elif. Hello, Ellison.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good. And yourself? Give me a second, please.
What's a long one? Denise, Elif. Hi. Hi. What does FIT stand for? We're the Fund for Innovation and Transformation. We're connected to MCIC. We're one of their programs. We had some training with you not too long ago. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, for advocacy. It was great. I remember you presenting. Yeah. Oh, the spur changed? That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So yeah, FIT's a program, an innovation program connected to MCIC. Amazing. So our statement is from the Canadian Labour Congress, and it's. Do we want to take a moment to read it and then talk? Yeah, read it's in the chat. Yeah. It was in the workbook. It must be in the chat as well. I can send it to you actually. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's in the. I think I'm looking in the wrong place then. I just put the link in the chat for you there. Okay, thank you. Yep.
Sorry about that. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I think we're all reading.
Waiting for me.
No, reading. Sorry, I'm reading. Anyways.
Oh, okay. Did we choose to work on a specific statement, or is there only one?
Oh, we're just reading. They gave one in the workbook. There's one for each group. I can give you the link.
Gotcha. No, I got it. Thanks.
We got it. Okay, the Canadian Labour Congress one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're just reading it to ourselves right now.
And again, we're just finishing reading the statement.
Okay, good, perfect. I was
Why it's
just
quiet.
jumping in to see if everything was clear and if you needed anything, but I'll let you finish reading.
Hi, Barbara.
Thanks. Just stopping by to see if everything's okay. You have the article, you know what to do.
Yeah, we're just finishing up reading it and then we'll start our discussion.
Okay, send us a message if you need any help or if there's anything you need.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah.
Did people have a chance to read through it?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Who wants to be the report back person? Anyone want to be a note taker and is good at reporting back, or?
I can be a
Happy
note
to
taker.
go for it. Yeah.
No, but I mean, if anybody else wants to take the lead, I'll be happy to support, or else I can be the note taker and report back, whatever you like.
That sounds good, Gabriel.
Want me to do it?
Thank you. Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Cheers.
What did you think about the statement?
Yeah, so the first question is, what do you like about it? And then the next one will be what we changed. So I guess what I liked about it was that it's very like specific and detailed and offers like concrete examples, and is related to history as well as present day issues.
Yeah, same here. I thought it was
Call to
very,
action, which I like.
yeah, very solid the way it was outlined. I like the use of quotes as well. That really humanizes, you know, brings that personal touch to things. My first impression, actually, well, maybe that's the next part, but yeah, the quotes, the connections, the historical connections, and that whole thread really brought it together.
I think I liked that it also addressed the intersectional kind of effect of the month and kind of recognized it and didn't just focus on Black History Month, because, well, it can be exacerbated by other factors. So I definitely like that part.
The intersectionality piece?
Yes.
Or what other thematics do you think like it covered? Or themes?
Sorry, I don't think I'm understanding your question.
So we're not only talking about Black communities here, but we're talking about intersectionality. And
Yes,
what other themes are being brought forward by the statement, do you think?
They especially had one part about how women's work in care environments are often undervalued. So I like that they recognize that their work undervalued because of their of them being Black, but then also as women, they're also undervalued. So yeah, just like that they recognize that.
Do we think the organization or the statement, do you see like those are all things we liked, obviously. Now switching gears to like perhaps thinking what might be missing from the statement. Did we think that the organization did a good enough job at looking at the organizational itself? Did they link Black History Month to their values? Did they talk about their own journey regarding I mean,
that might have been a little bit general in the way they handled that. It was very functional, I guess. But
yeah, considering it's from a union organization, I was surprised they weren't more linked to their own values and their own work and sort of the fight for labor justice.
Yeah. I saw that they seem to make a statement towards the end. The second last paragraph, care work is necessary to be continued. I felt like that came very at the end of things where you might have put it closer. Impression was this is a very long statement, and I know that you want to get into detail and depth, but I was immediately I guess my first reaction was like, wow, oh, wow, this is a lot. So depending on how you want to capture your audiences or how you want this to be landing with people, I maybe would say, like, are there ways to break up the content or have the content be digested in different ways, in the way either it's designed or the way it's shared out? Is it shared out in a few portions, if that makes sense?
No, I agree. There was definitely, when I first pulled it up, I expect, when I hear the word statement, I expect like 1 to 2 paragraphs max.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was a bit more. It's a bit more of like an article or like
yeah. And the depth is very interesting, but maybe there's an opportunity to have some overarching quote statement thing that's again tight and short, and then people can click on to different components, and maybe those components can direct them down some of those specific aspects that are explored here, like just so you have more people reading it, I guess, if it's set up in a way that's going to be my brain's going that way, but yeah.
Also, given the length, I would have personally liked to see some more about how they put those values into practice. So if they have any programs that they offer for their Black members, or any tools they equip them with, or any action, like any events, actions they have coming up or have done in the past. But I don't think I saw any mention of that. Given the length, I feel like there might have been some space for that somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds like they were staying consistent with the something needs to change, but they weren't, like you say, giving some suggested action.
The letter is pretty much the only action there.
And the one thing that I found was really glaringly missing, I just feel like there was 2 quotes from CLC employee, like executives, but it would have been nice to have like a Black care worker or some sort of voice of someone who's impacted by this history and this discrimination.
Interesting.
And I know it talks about, it follows the history, this message does, but I think, does it focus too much on the month itself? Do they need to integrate a little bit more language that talks about this is not just a one time of year thing? It is that.
Do you want me to give you a summary of like what we all said?
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
So what we lacked that the statement, so it is a statement on the focus on Black care workers, and it is from the Canadian Labour Congress, so a union. We lacked the specificity of the statement and the fact that it was very concrete. At the very end, like the statement offers a letter for folks to sign. It's anchored in history, so it gives good concrete history, like on what are Black care workers and their journey in Canada. And we also pointed out the intersectionality of the statement, putting forward gender as an example, or women's work, and to see how the intersectionality with the Black care workers and their history. What's missing, we felt that a greater introspection might have been interesting, not only talking about history, but really looking at their own organization and their journey, missing links to their own work. We didn't really see any connections with the organizational values very long. And it would have been interesting to ask some voices of Black folks or Black voices that would have experience with this history and this experience. And we should focus on work throughout the year and not just focus on the month of February.
Yeah, great.
Are we comfortable with this?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you for doing that. Gabrielle.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for bringing up these very important points. How long did we have in our subgroups?
There
I'm
was
not
just a
sure.
notice that said we had 5 minutes left, and that was about 2 minutes ago. So I think we're getting close to the end.
Okay.
I think you were taking notes, so I don't think we heard as much from you, but if you have your own thoughts to add there, please feel free to.
I was kind of leading you into like what I thought about missing values and such. So yeah, those were my remarks.
Okay, great.
What are you doing at results, Denise and Elif? I don't think. What are your titles or position?
Oh, we're both in communications. So I'm the communications manager.
And
Oh, really? Have any of you joined our communication working group at Corporation Canada? And I'm sorry if you.
Oh, we didn't know there was a communications working. We're connected to the one at OCIC and the one at CanWash, but we'd love to be connected with Cooperation Canada.
So we've got I'm comms manager at Corporation Canada. So every 2 or 3 months we meet with communication colleagues across our membership. You should definitely join.
Okay.
Please, that would be great.
Yeah.
Send me an email maybe after your after this, and I'll make sure that I can include you into.
Is your email on the website?
Yeah, I'll put it right there, and I'll share it with you privately. And you, Allison, are you also working in communications?
Yeah, I'm the communication specialist for FIT. So Fund for Innovation and Transformation, connected to.
Great, nice
Yeah,
to meet you all.
Yeah,
have you joined the communication?
No, I haven't. I'd love to.
Aha.
Yeah. Sounds great.
So
yeah, I'm only connected.
Welcome back, everyone. We're just slowly waiting for everyone to be back. I think we should have everyone is back. And yeah. So I'm very interested to hear from everyone around the activity and your thoughts on the statements. So can we do it group by group? Does that work? Did everyone make sure to assign someone to speak? So I can put this back on screen so everyone has access, just as a reminder of what we're doing. So we are looking at statements. So we had 3 examples of different statements that each group looked at. We'll share all of the statements are in the activity sheet if you want to look at them as we talk about them. And I just want to open the floor to see if there are any key elements to add. No, to have a quick report back. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. To get a quick report back. And can we start with group 3? So share with us what you liked about the statement. So the name of the statement that you had, what you liked about the statement that you had, what things you changed to make it better, and did you feel that it matched the key elements we discussed? Not sure who is the assigned person from group 3.
We didn't quite assign a person, but I can go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
So the thing that we liked about this statement that was at the beginning they made a statement about how Black History Month should be celebrated all year round and not just in the month of February. And so we like that it opened it up with that. And then our statement read a little bit more like a blog post. And so, but what we liked about it was that it provided diverse options for engagement in their suggestions. So like perhaps if people don't have enough like money in their budget to buy things specifically from different places, there's options to read books or amplify voices and advocacy. So yeah, so that was the thing that we liked about the statement. the things that we thought it could change to make it better, more impactful, is it read very informally, and didn't really seem like a statement of purpose. So if the purpose of that blog was to read like a blog, then it did a great job. But if it was supposed to be an official statement, we thought that if it could be endorsed by a president or somebody in a position of power in that organization, or even linked to a more official statement, then we thought that that would be more impactful and effective. But it was still very educational. Yeah, and then we did find that the last question was a little bit harder to answer because we didn't quite know what the purpose was. So like we said, we didn't know if the purpose was to be more like a blog or if this was their official statement. So we thought that perhaps only that organization could answer that question. But we also found it hard not knowing if the statement was representative of the work that of what this organization is actually living out, because they didn't quite provide any concrete examples of that within the statement. Yeah, so I think the key takeaway from that was, how do we, in our own statements, show that what we're saying is representative of the experience, like lived experience of the organization, their staff, and the work that they do.
Awesome.
Yeah. If anybody else from our group, if I missed anything, feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Tatum. Thank you, group 3. Group 2, does someone want to speak to the same questions in a summary way? How that statement was for you and what did you think? Does anyone from
sorry, we didn't really appoint someone to be the spokesperson, so I'm happy to go ahead, and if anyone else from my group would like to jump in, that would be totally great. So we got this statement from the Government of Canada's website, and we found that while like it does admit to that there was failure in terms of recognizing Black communities and in slavery and whatnot, it doesn't really, and it does speak to like key events in Canadian Parliament as well too. It doesn't really delve into contributions from the Black community. Like it kind of leaves very general statements like, there are many important contributions that Black Canadians and the communities have made. And then doesn't really say much more from that. And then really primarily, it seems to also miss like the so what factor. So, you know, there are key elements or key things that happen in history, but so what? How do we turn this into some kind of call to action, or what does this mean when we are recognizing Black history today? So that's kind of like the short form of what we talked about. If I'm missing anything, let me know, folks.
I'll add in as well that they talk about what Black people have provided to Canada in terms of contribution, but they don't really recognize that these contributions often came as and are acts of resistance. There's very little like recognition of, like, for example, they say that they give basically, to summarize, a statement that says like Black people were enslaved by Canadians, rather than taking ownership and recognizing that Canadians enslaved Black people without the passive voice. So there's not a lot of recognition of Black people resisting the Canadian colonial state in their statement, which we felt was kind of lacking.
Thank you, group 2. And group 1. Would you like to share a little bit about what you liked about your statement, what could have been done to make it better, and if you found that the statement matched some of the key elements we talked about earlier?
Sure. So I was the designated spokesperson for Group 1. We had a statement from the Canadian Labour Congress, so a union, on that focused really on Black care workers in Canada. On what we like about the statement, well, we felt that it was very specific and concrete. It was anchored in history. There were a lot of examples of like what happened back in history, the reality of Black care workers back then, and the impact that is still felt today. So we liked those very concrete examples and the specificity. We also like the fact that we witness intersectionality within the statement. We talked about Black communities and Black care workers more specifically, but we kind of linked that with other thematics, themes such as gender equity or equity regarding women's work. Those are the points that we liked. On the what was missing front, we felt that the statement was really looking at the history, at the state of affairs and everything, but had some perhaps was lacking introspection and looking internally at the organizational level. In that front, we felt that we weren't really talking about the values of the organization, and therefore we couldn't link the values with specific initiatives from the Canadian Labour Congress. We felt that the statement was very long and full of background on history and all, but very, very long and dense. And our statement, we had some quotes in there, but we felt that it would have been interesting to have quotes from somebody, a care worker, somebody at a care worker, that the statement is on Black care workers, but we didn't feel like they had representation in the statement. And yeah, maybe a little bit like others said, we really focused on the month of February, and we should have perhaps mentioned that it is important to work on and for the Canadian Labour Congress, it would have been important to mention that their work has to be on throughout the year.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabrielle and Group 1. So yeah, so 3 very different statements, 3 very different approaches. One was more of a sharing resources and blog post, one very formal statement that is very governmental because it's from the government, and then a third one that was more of a longer form statement, but more contextualizing, and also had a very specific entrance point through care workers, which was very relevant to the organization. So very different ways of doing, but 3 options on directions to go. There is no good or bad way. There is the way that works for your organization. But I'm glad that everyone was able to look at those statements, critique them, hopefully learn from them in terms of like what we want to do and what we don't want to do. And also, I think a really important piece that comes up in every one of these statements is about positioning Black people and African Caribbean and Black people at the center of your statement. This is something that we always try and highlight in all the work that we do, is who is at the center of your concerns, who is at the center of your work. So we've been going for a little bit, so I think we're going to take a break. And then, so we'll take a little break. We've talked a little bit about the key elements. Maybe before we go on break, after reviewing the statements, are there any key elements we would like to add to our list? So the key elements we thought should be in a statement were purpose and intention, authenticity and representation, alignment with organizational values and commitments, and remaining accountable. Our audiences, so making sure we are considering how this connects with my audiences as an organization, and who are we trying to speak to. Is there anything we'd like to add here before we go on break? Yes, Allison. Please go ahead. Allison, it may just be me. I can't hear you. You're still on mute for me, but I'm happy if you can send in the chat if you're unable to unmute at this moment. Okay, perfect. I'll wait for your comments in the chat. Any other folks who want to add to the key elements we have, or are they good? If this works for everyone, let's take a 10-minute break, and we will be back at 2:42. Yes, Allison, you said someone had mentioned accessibility for the audiences. Yes. So I kind of put it all in the one bubble of audiences, but I can add a question around accessibility for audiences and your readership, and how the context should be set up to maximize the user-reader experience. Okay, I'll add that for sure. Okay, everyone take a break. Please get up. Go grab something if you need to. Justin, thank you for joining us. The rest of the session will be recorded, so you can have access to it as well. And feel free to send us an email if you need anything. Okay, have a good break, everyone. Hello, everyone. It is 2:42, so I'm going to slowly bring us back to the session. Hopefully, everyone was able to take a break, and we can continue the presentation and the work that we're doing together. If you are just joining us, we are on the second part of the session, so we're going through we're going to be starting our drafting statements and peer review. We have an activity worksheet, which we can reshare in the chat for you to follow along. So I'm just going to give everyone a minute to get back. Just welcoming everyone back. Bienvenue. Nous allons recommencer la session et poursuivre notre travail dans cet atelier. On n'a pas beaucoup de temps qui nous reste, donc je vais commencer assez vite. Si tout le monde est prêt. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. So before the break, we were talking about the key elements that we look for in a Black History Month statement. And we had just reviewed some examples of statements, not from the sector. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a lot of statements from the sector, so I went a little bit beyond. But good examples of 3 different approaches to writing a statement, and allowed us to kind of do the exercise of evaluating what works, what doesn't work, and what we could do better. So before we move on into what I want to call into drafting our statements, I wanted to maybe pause on, we've looked at statements that are pretty fully formed and have good standing, but I wanted us to look at this. This isn't necessarily a statement, it's more of an internal memo. But I think it highlights something we haven't really talked about yet, what happens when things go wrong. So I wanted us to maybe spend 5 minutes talking about what you see in front of you. I would love to hear from you, looking at the key elements that we talked about, like what are the things, in the same way we evaluated the other statements, what are the things that don't work? What are the things that work in the statement? And what would you do if this was suggested as a direction for your team? So I'll give everyone a minute to look at it. Just so you know, I've anonymized the organization, but it's a pretty well-known statement that was released in 2021 by a Canadian organization. And they have apologized for it. So just to be clear, we're using this as a learning tool, not a critique of the organization that published it. But yes, I'd love to hear from you folks. What are your first impressions when you see this? How does it, I'll be very honest, not meet some of the key elements we talked about? And what does this highlight for you in terms of specific challenges or dangers, or challenges or dangers in terms of creating statements for Black History Month? It just says, oh, Denise or Alif, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm Denise. We're here together. My first instinct that really stuck out to me was have a conversation with a Black employee, of putting the onus on employees in the organization to educate and inform non-Black employees, and I assume it was done not without consulting that this is going to be okay for you folks, just because of the tone. And then the rest of it's very just trivializing, like dance to a reggae song, learn about Africa. Like it's just very like stereotypical and trivializing of Black experience and the complexity of what it is to be a Black person. It's just very yeah, it's not very meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. Any other thoughts and impressions? Go ahead, Ben. You can go ahead, Ben. We can't hear you, but
I think a lot of the activities they suggested don't require any actual like I mean, other than the trivia, don't really require any research or self-reflection, and could actually be inviting people to confirm racist biases that they have. Like, for example, taking a photo of an item of your home that reminds you of Black history. That doesn't really require any research or learning about Black people or culture or resistance.
mm-hmm. That's a very good point. So in the chat, Donna shares, it reduces actions to simple box checking. Very true. Allison also shares, creating a competition feels crass, tick boxing approach, and brings an awkward, non-inclusive power. All very true. Does anyone else have any thoughts, impressions?
The have a conversation is true. My colleague, I think it was Allison mentioning that colleague, the Black employee might not want to educate folks, but it's very tokenizing to ask staff to just go and have a conversation with somebody. Perhaps that person doesn't feel like having a conversation at all. So it's the tokenizing aspect of it that bothered me initially. And I guess everything that everybody else mentioned is very true.
Eleanor also asks, thank you, Gabrielle. Eleanor also adds, it portrays Africa as a monolith, not showcasing the diversity of African countries or the Black experiences So all very good points. Is there anything else that we're seeing before we move on? So I think everyone you really have picked up on all of the pieces. I'll add maybe one additional thing. This is a Black History Month statement memo that is not for Black people within their organization. They are not considered at the center of the statement. So, and it shows up in multiple ways. So the tokenizing pieces that someone mentioned, is, I think, a main piece of it. Have a conversation with a Black employee. So Black employees are supposed to have a conversation with themselves or each other. How do they fit into this picture? And I think it's something we often forget is who is at the center of what we're trying to do. And in this case, it's a very clear articulation of Black people not being at the center of this Black History Month so-called celebration, because I think it would be very generous to call it a celebration. What are the 6 hidden words? Oh, I didn't try to unscramble them because I was afraid that it might get worse. So I'm not sure what they were, but I think the gamification of this celebration is also, I think, something very concerning and something that should be a red flag for us as we create statements and try to find creative ways of continuing to do these celebrations. I think someone pointed this out. It's quite evident that there was little or no consultation of the Black folks within their organization, but also there's an expectation of them to perform almost during Black History Month. So I think it's something we always have to consider, especially during Black History Month, as we're asking of our Black employees in the moments of creating content around the month. Something that I also always try to highlight for folks is there's a logo here, which is the continent of Africa, but also a face of a person, but also the use of the colors. So what most people don't know is those are Pan-African colors, so really have a very deep and long history within African, Caribbean, and Black communities. I don't necessarily think that they understood or knew that connection, but it is something, if you are going to use those colors, to really fully grasp the history behind them, and in some way recognize that in the way you're using that in your graphic visual representations. It's something we didn't talk much about, but wanted to highlight as well. I think the title is also very telling. It says "Rise to the Challenge," which kind of frames Black History Month as a challenge, more than a celebration or something else. So lots to critique in this. I always think it's a good thing to see what not to do, and to develop also those reflexes of, recognizing when something is wrong. And like I said, the organization that put this out did apologize and walked it back. But it is a Canadian organization, and it was a very public memo, that was then critiqued widely. Anything else on this piece before we move on to the next activity? No? Okay. So we're now going to do I think the fun part. I don't know if everyone's going to agree that this is the fun part, but we're going to go into activity 3, and this is where I want to encourage, this is where the bulk of what we're hoping to do today is to do some drafting. So this is organization specific. So if you are here with someone from your organization, we can put you in a breakout room to do that work together. But if not, and if you're here for your organization, this is more individual work. But we want you to start drafting your Black History Month statements. So we have the key elements that we've established to guide you. And I really want people to remember that there is no right or wrong way to do this. It's really trying and working out from everything we've learned today, trying to channel all of that knowledge into a statement that matches our organization's needs and desires. Of course, like I mentioned at the top, if you're not ready to write a Black History Month statement, that's also fine. If your organization is not ready to write a Black History statement, I would advise not writing a bad statement, but more taking a step back and using the time to create a strategy for a future creation of a statement and sharing a Black History statement. So if you don't feel ready to write a statement, today is all, you can use the time that we're gonna have to create a strategy around how to do that best for your own teams and organization. So all of these instructions are also on your activity sheet, just as a reminder of what we discussed earlier. So purpose and intention, why are we writing these statements? Authenticity and representation. Is my organization ready to be writing a statement? What is my organization doing in this context, and how are they connected to Black History Month statements? Black History Month, sorry. And articulating the alignments between our organizational values and commitments so that we can remain accountable. There's one missing here, audience, of course, that we talked a little bit about. So who is our audience? Who is at the center of our concerns? Who is this for? So there can be multiple audiences here. It could be multiple people. So making sure that we kind of think that through. And how, I think we talked a little bit about the accessibility piece of the audience as well. And it was in my things to keep in mind. So who are we hoping to reach with this message? And how is this statement going to be accessible? Writing a statement on social media versus a newsletter versus a website is very different. So kind of figuring out the tone of your statement will also be dependent on where this is going to be accessible for your audiences. if you are writing a statement in French, there's always a consideration of language. This isn't on the slide, I'll add that later. There are some things that don't translate, like anti-Blackness, for example. So there is a little bit of creativity and thinking through and finding a language that matches what you're trying to say, and we can work through that. And also an example of a language challenge that exists in translation between English and French. At our organization, we say Black History Month, et Mois de l'histoire des personnes noires, but the translation that is more generally used is Mois de l'histoire des Noirs. We decided to add the personne noire because we find that the use of just noir doesn't embody the personhood of Black folks in that context, but that is an organizational choice. So just wanted to flag that as well for folks who have to write bilingual statements. Okay, I'm going to give you 20 minutes to work on your statements, and I will stay here. So if you have questions and if you want to work through a certain part, we can do that. And then once we're done, we can come back and have a little bit of a peer discussion. And I think we'll do that all together and share any insights and challenges we faced in the drafting process. If we have time, we can also go through an example statement if someone is feeling courageous and wants us to review it and walk through their draft. Yeah, so I'll give everyone, we'll start the 20 minutes now, so we'll come back at 3:20. Does that work for everyone? Is it clear? Happy drafting. And like I said, I'll be here. So if at any point you have any questions or if you're feeling stuck, feel free to give me a shout. So it's been about 10 minutes. Is everyone going okay? Does anyone have any questions or like need support on a specific point? If not, I'll let you work for a few more minutes. If you're already done, also signal that because we can always use more time. So if most people are done or if we feel like we're far enough along, we can come back together and start doing some peer review or talking through some of the challenges. So I'm just going to give everyone a warning. If you're writing something, just to wrap it up so we can all come back together. And if we have any courageous volunteers, we can maybe, if anyone feels like they're ready to get some feedback from peers, we can do a peer discussion around someone's statement to give them some feedback and some pointers, or we can have a more general discussion about what are some of the challenges we're facing, how we can problem solve around those challenges, and how to support each other. So just making sure everyone's wrapping up so we can come back together and wrap up our session. Thank you, Erin. Okay. I think we can bring everyone back. So, how was that exercise? Do you have a first draft? How are you feeling about that drafting process? It can be good, bad. Still figuring it out. I'd love to hear how you're feeling about it and how we can support in the next 5 minutes. Good from Allison. Yes, Denise and Alif.
Yeah, we got an outline done, not a statement yet, but that was really good. But we had the question actually about like involving Black staff in your organization, and how like we don't want to have them do the work, but also don't want to like do like nothing about them without them kind of idea. So how to sort of kind of our idea was to like for us to draft something and then invite them if they would like to look at it, to give us any feedback. But I was interested in what you thought.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to approach it. I think there's always two things that to keep in mind. Black folks aren't a monolith. Some people have a desire to be involved in processes like these, and others just do not want to. And those two are fine. Like those two can be true. And then second, it's more about creating opportunities and not making it a requirement or something, whether it's subtext or like overtly something that is asked of them. So really making it as creating the opportunity for people to give feedback if they would like to, but not making it mandatory. Even when we don't call it mandatory, I hope I'm making myself clear. Sometimes we say something is optional, but it's optional. So making sure we're not creating spaces that are that way. So yeah, I think having something ready, giving folks the time as well is really important. There are a lot of demands on Black staff, specifically in January and February. So something I like to tell organizations is to start early. You shouldn't be planning for Black History Month in February. You shouldn't be planning or start your planning in January. This should be like any other thing that you do and that is meaningful and that you show care for. You should do that in advance, give people ample time to decide whether or not they want to be involved and to give feedback and how to do that in a way that feels right for them. So yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know if other folks have anything to add to that in terms of how to involve your staff and how to make sure that their feedback is integrated, specifically your Black staff, so they don't feel burdened by the work that happens during Black History Month. But more encouraged and fully supported. Okay.
I think the only thing I would add is that sometimes which I mean, I'm adding it, but you have covered this, is just like sometimes when you are going towards your staff, their for involvement, their reaction is pretty telling to whether or not maybe your organization is at a point where it should be saying anything at all. I think sometimes like an organization may want to do it because it feels like the right thing to do. And sometimes Black staff is like, no, this is not something that I want the organization to be a part of, or I don't feel comfortable participating for a multitude of reasons. And sometimes that's like a good place to pause and focus on. And that can be the action for Black History Month. So I think sometimes in those moments, like going towards Black staff can be a natural like moment for stopping and rethinking. And it doesn't mean then be like create 10 million follow-ups with that Black staff and be like, okay, so what do we do? What like now guide us and like redirect us? But sometimes like their reaction can be really telling on whether or not the organization should even be participating in through a statement per se.
It's a really good addition, Layla. Thank you. Are there any other questions around like challenges you faced while you were working through a draft? Did anything come up? It could also be like something that we talked about earlier really helped get you going in your drafting. Okay. Allison, I'm guessing this is your statement that you want us to look at for some feedback. Yes, okay. We only have 5 minutes left, so let's take 2 minutes, everyone, have a look, and then provide some feedback where we can. Allison, I know we haven't been able to unmute your mic during the session, but
I think it's back now.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry. Yeah, if anybody wants to look, that's great. If not, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'm also going to be hosting like office hours in the next week for folks for us to come back together if you want some like feedback on your statements and do a little bit more of like this part of the things, like peer review, because I know time is running out. So that's also just a flag of one of the things we're going to talk about after this.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity of this session.
Ben, go ahead.
Not really a design question, but do you have any advice for informing graphic designers who are like putting a graphic up for social media for your statement, for example?
Yeah, so the visual part of Black History Month statements is actually quite it's big and important part of statements specifically around Black History Month. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we talked a little bit about Pan-African colors. So if you've been on the internet during Black History Month, you've seen the red, yellow, green, and black. Those are Pan-African colors. They're very contextual and have a very strong meaning. So that is a preference. I would say whatever design you choose for it to be meaningful, connected to a story is always good, or connected to the community. Also working with, I think this is all the time, but working with designers from the community is also a good way to kind of make sure that you are, one, investing back into the community you're talking about, so who is at the center of our work, but also they offer really good feedback around the elements of design that are being used. So Pan-African colors are preferred and used quite broadly. They're not necessary for Black History Month programming or statements. So you'll notice that the ARC Hub doesn't really use Pan-African colors for our Black History Month programming. We use our own colors, but with very clear Black History Month echoing. But that's really a design choice and really comes back to your team and what your design aesthetic is.
Thanks, that was really helpful.
Okay. So Allison, there's some really good feedback in the chat. I'll offer my feedback a little bit later because I do see the time. So I'm gonna wrap us up a little bit and start moving us along. You should be seeing my screen. So before we end the session, we are a GAC funded program. So we are funded by the Government of Canada, Global Affairs Canada. So we need to report back on the work that we do, and we need you to evaluate our session. So Megan is going to share this in the chat, but you can also scan this through your phone. It would be really lovely if you could complete the evaluation before the end of the session or after the session ends to let us know how we did today and what we can do better. But also if there are any ideas for future sessions that you would like to see us tackle. So that's there. Thank you for completing our evaluation. Just to bring us back, some key takeaways from today. Black History Month statement has to be purposeful and intentional, authentic and representative, and show alignment with our organizational values and commitments. And we also set our organizational work. This goes without saying, but I'm going to say it still. Each organization is going to have its own process. It's important to be clear, sincere, and intentional and relevant in your own. So make this work for you while still following these guidelines. We have some resources. So our ARC website, if you haven't had a chance, is a really good resource for the work that we do. So you're able to look at our resource library, which has a lot of really interesting and good stuff, whether it's for your specific type of work. So if you work in comms, we have some good resources in comms, but also more broadly around anti-racism work and how to connect that to whether it's you work in finance, whether you work in programming, all of those things. So we have some interesting stuff there. That's also where you can keep up with us in terms of like what we're doing outside. We have a lot of events coming up for Black History Month in particular. And like I just mentioned, I'll be having office hours for peer review of your statements. So if someone, as you're working through your drafts, you feel like you need a little bit more help or a little bit more support, I'll be sharing those with you next week. But tentatively, they are February 9th from 11:30 to 12:30. We'll send them by email, so don't worry about having that. So you'll have access to that, so you can come back and we can have more in-depth conversation around those things. Also happening at the ARC Hub this month, we have in person in Ottawa. If you are Ottawa based, we have a film screening on Monday. So we will share all of this information so you can register and join us for that. It's in the context of IDW, so International Development Week. We will also be hosting training on uprooting anti-Blackness, white matter. So this is one of our Black History Month activities. And that's going to be online on February 21st. On March 20th, we have Understanding Anti-Racism as a Framework, Terminology and Concepts. That's also a training that will be happening on March 20th. And we are having African, Caribbean, and Black closed community gatherings throughout the month of February. And all of this is available. So that was a very quick rundown because of the time. Please complete the evaluation. I have to say thank you so much for being here. We really enjoy doing these types of activities and workshops and sessions, and we hope that they were helpful to you in your work. Thank you to Wendy for the interpretation and Megan for the technical support. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.